Thanks, James. Welcome to On The Beat. Going through to 8 o'clock with Mike Pender, a founder member of The Searchers. So 2 tracks from The Searchers there, Almost Saturday Night, that I think should have been a hit single for them. You should have gone with that, Mike. And Love Potion number 9, which was a big hit for you in America, but not here.
That's right. And I've just come back from America, actually.
Yeah.
To go back on Wednesday. Still getting over the jet lag. But yeah, that's the big one in America. I actually finished the show off with that one.
So you have a different act for America, because Bumblebee was a big hit in America, wasn't it?
Again, different songs over there. Yeah, but Bumblebee for me was like one of those little sort of strange songs that you do, and people say this is going to be a hit. It was a big hit in America, but I didn't do it over there.
Yeah,
they wanted me to do it, and I said no, I can't do it, because I was the one on the record who stood there and went, a bumblebee, a naughty bumblebee.
Well, we'll probably play that one later anyway. But you've written your autobiography called The Search for Myself, and you're on the Solid Silver 60s tour, which is about to take place, that features you, Billy J. Kramer, the Mersey Beats, P.P. Arnold and Chris Farlow. So who's actually going to accompany you on that? Are you with Mike Pender's Searchers on that?
No. As usual, Solid Silver 60s, they provide the backing band.
Yeah.
And they invite certain people, vocalists from the 60s, a la Chris Farlow. I always use a band called New Amen Corner.
Oh, right.
They always on this show.
And any of the old Amen Corner?
No, I wouldn't know, but I don't think so, no.
Right.
No, it's a completely new band, and they are really good musicians. I think they've come together solely to back other artists, although they do do some gigs on their own.
It's a good show. I mean, Chris Farlow's still sounding great, isn't he?
Yeah, last time I went with Chris, he was, just the same as he's always been. The crowd really get into his songs as well, especially his famous one.
Out of Town.
Out of Town, yeah.
I always think when I meet him that...
Sorry, Out of Time.
Yeah, it looks like he sort of walked off the set of Minder or something like that, doesn't it? He's a great guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, every time we meet up on one of these Solid Silver shows or whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's always a walk down memory lane for everybody. That's what these shows are all about. And even for ourselves, it's a walk down memory lane to meet up with all the old guys again. Some of us are still around, obviously.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, there's hardly a group from the 60s now, if any, that can actually reform with their original lineup, because so many people have gone.
Well, that's right.
But the Solid Silver 60s tour, the gigs in this area, the tour kicks off on March the 22nd at the Grand in Blackpool. 23rd of March, the next night, is going to be the Palace in Manchester. March the 27th, Southport Theatre. And April the 3rd at the Phil.
The Phil, yeah, one of my favourite places, actually, after seeing Buddy Holly there in 1958.
Ah, well, I've lined up a sort of Buddy Holly cover of yours next, but just before, the tickets for your show, they're from £23, so that's very reasonable.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Well, let's compare it. Paul McCartney's appearing at the Arena on May the 28th.
Right.
The tickets start at £70.
Right.
I mean, would you pay £70 to see McCartney?
Well, I probably wouldn't pay £70 to see anybody.
Yeah.
Realistically, I don't go to see anybody anymore.
Is that because you're a performer and you want to be up there, so it's hard to be part of the audience?
No, nothing like that at all. It's just that I like to get away from the business. If I do it, like when I finish the Solid Silver, I like to go on a holiday, get away from it. Some people like to stay in the business. They're on the phone talking to promoters and agents about what's going to happen. I get away from it. I like a break, and that's the way I like to do it, really.
Mm-hmm. So who was the last person you saw on stage then?
Would have been Peter Asher in America. And all those guys on that show over there, which was called The British Invasion. They love that title in America.
Yes. Now, Peter Asher's coming to the Cavern in August.
He was telling me that, yeah.
Is he good on stage?
He's very good, and he's a good raconteur as well, because he introduced every act on that tour that I've just been on.
Yeah.
Which included Terry Sylvester, used to be with the Hollies, Chad and Jeremy. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd never met them before. I was in America last year on a similar tour, and they were on the same tour, and I thought, I've never met these guys. And they were they are still quite big in America. They didn't do too much over here.
No.
But also on that tour was Denny Lane. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, he's got a big connection with Paul McCartney and Wings.
Yeah. And Go Now, of course.
And Go Now, of course, yeah. With the Moody Blues, yeah. And he's written a couple of good things as well. And now, who else was on that tour?
Yes.
But it's typical. Everybody was English on that tour. Mm-hmm. Well, they had to be, really. Yeah. And, of course, the Americans love the old English accent.
Yeah. And they love the Scouse accents too, didn't they?
Right. Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah. In fact, it always amused me when I met Ashley Kirker, and she said that when she first met the Beatles, she learned to speak English from them, of course, and so she learned to speak with a Scouse accent.
Well,
so,
yeah, you wouldn't call Scouse accent English, would you, really?
Exactly. Oh. Now, you mentioned seeing Buddy Holly at the Phil. We're going to play your version of Listen to Me here. Could it be that you could have recorded almost any one of Buddy Holly's songs because you knew them all?
Yes, I think that's about right. I was a big Buddy Holly fan, as was Tony Jackson at the time. For me, his easy sort of style of playing guitar, played most of his hits in 3 chords, A, D, and E. And you could do a lot with those 3 chords. But Peggy Sue, for me, was that sort of fantastic new sound with the guitar and obviously with the drummer.
And when you actually saw him live with a Fender Stratocaster, you'd have never seen one of those before, would you, live?
Only on TV.
Yeah.
And, the Fender Strat, everybody wanted one. But you can get them at that time in Liverpool. I think the first guy to have one was Hank Marvin in the Shadows. Cliff paid an extortionate price for one. But, of course, yes, the Fender Strat, that was the guitar. I've got one now, actually. Mm-hmm. I bought one when I was in America some years ago.
Okay. What was your first American guitar?
Would have been a Gibson, which I got after my Burns Trisonic, which took us through the Star Club days and the early recordings of Sweet's My Sweet and Sugar and Spice. And then got the Gibson, which took us through Needles and Pins and Don't Throw Your Love Away and a couple of others.
And is the Burns in a museum by now?
Well, it should be. I have no idea where that Burns guitar... It's always the same, you go through these guitars in your early days and you realise 50 years later you should have held on to them. There was no need to let them go. It's like a thing that musicians, or a lot of musicians have. They buy a new guitar and give in the old one.
Mm-hmm. But how many guitars have you actually got, roughly?
A lot, actually.
Oh, right. So you haven't let them all go? A
lot of them. Some have been stolen, including the famous Rickenbacker 12-string 360, which I used on When You Walk in the Room. Mm-hmm. And that's quite a rare guitar, actually. It's very similar to George Harrison's, except George Harrison's had what I call the slash opening in the body, and the one I had the F-hole, which for me was more sexy. I used to say that, that Rick is a lot more sexy than George Harrison's. But I've still got quite a few guitars, but I only use the one now.
And what are you playing on Listen to Me?
On Listen to Me, it has to be... a Club 60 Hofner guitar.
Listen to me, here I say.
Great track there, The Searchers with Listen to Me. And when it came to guitars in The Searchers, you mentioned the Rickenbackers and the like. Now, I always thought that John played lead guitar, but that's not true, is it? He played lead guitar sometimes you played lead.
No, I played lead all the time. John was that sort of... He had that sort of gimmicky rhythm. John was rhythm player, yeah. But can I just go back to what you said before about Listen to Me?
Yep.
I think, if my memory serves me right, it was a Burns Trisonic on there and not the Hofner Club 60.
Right.
I think I'm right there.
Yeah.
But it's so long ago, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And one of the few records that you do a narration in, too.
What's that?
Where you speak in the middle of it. Yes. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Right, now I've invited Norman Killen in, who works at the Walker Art Gallery, because I knew he was a keen Searchers fan, and he's brought in the originals of a lot of the songs you did.
I'm just looking at them.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Did you collect the originals yourself or anything?
No.
Yeah.
No. No, I don't know why people, you know, you get people, I mean, you got to go back to Chris Curtis, really, for record collecting. I mean, he had a fantastic collection of albums. I've got albums at home that I got in the 60s from record companies. Some of them have never been played.
Yes.
So, no, I'm not a keen sort of record player at all. I kept a few things, which obviously I've got in the book, but not a lot of records, no.
Yeah. And what about bringing songs to the Searchers? Was it mostly Chris who was bringing them?
He was the guy. Chris really, you know, he was the one who went out and he collected and he listened. I mean, I was so busy having a good time doing other things, more or less similar to what I'm doing today. But it has to be said that Chris was the one who found all those songs for us. You know, and most of them were American recordings. So he was the one really that had that sort of thing for the band. Even promoters coming over from wherever. I remember Horst Wascher coming to the Cavern and seeing us on there, and he was immediately struck with Chris's style of drumming. Chris wasn't a fantastic drummer, but he was a showman.
Well, he stood up to play the drums, didn't he?
He actually stood up to play them drums, yeah. I mean...
what's the reason for that to be noticed?
But people didn't mind in those days, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind today, as long as it sounded good and it looked good. And he looked a little bit different from the other three guys in the band. Yeah. He just had that sort of electricity about him. He dressed differently with his leathers and long hair. So yeah, he was the guy.
He was a real personality right from the word go.
Right from the word go.
And did you say to him at some stage, this name Chris Crummy isn't right for being a Searcher?
Well, I've got to think about what Tony Jackson said one time. We were being interviewed at the Cavern in the dressing room, and they had a few posters around of certain or different Liverpool groups, and they had a poster on the wall, Leigh Curtis and the All Stars, and apparently Chris just seen the thing and said, "My name's Chris Curtis." I think he thought Crummy was a little bit, well, crummy, if you know what I mean.
Yes, indeed.
But, I mean, that was his name. Why change your name? I don't know.
Yeah. Now Norman got in touch with me the other day because he said that Ralph Ellis was on the show 2 weeks ago with songs about his guitar heroes and things, and Ralph wanted to hear an old record of his called "Crazy About My Baby." Now, do you want to take the story from there, Norman?
Well, yes, it was always one of my favourite swing and blue jeans records, but it had an original, and the original is on the B-side of "Goodbye My Love" by Robert Mosley. So you got two Merseybeat records there out of one single.
Yeah.
And
so, yeah, it's a great record, both sides.
And "Goodbye My Love" is a very obscure single because it wasn't an American hit. So do you remember the day? Did Chris come in with that? Had he found it somewhere?
Yeah, he found that record. And I've just been looking at Norman's collection here, and I notice it's actually, the original's called "Goodbye My Lover."
Yes.
Goodbye. So that could mean anything, couldn't it, really?
Yes.
I mean, you know, you look at that and you think, wow, I never knew that.
So you changed the title of it?
Changed the title, "Goodbye My Love."
And what about working out the arrangement? Because it's quite an eerie record that you made, isn't it?
Yeah, that all come about on the session. I don't think we sat down and said, let's make it sound like this, let's make it sound like that. There's a lot of echo on it, because it is a moody type song. And
right.
my vocals double tracked on it. I think Chris is
So when you want to be moody, you put the echo on?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I remember on Jukebox Jury, Brian Epstein saying that this was going to be a #1 record.
Right.
And I think he was laying money on it at the time, but it didn't make #1, did it?
No, I mean, I've heard that. I've heard that Epstein did really go for that song, yeah. But no, just missed out, got to #3, I think.
Yeah. Would you have actually been told when it was going to be on Jukebox Jury so you could watch it or not?
Do you know, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I did watch that that show now and again, and I cannot remember if people relayed to you how it was going to work out, or if it was going to come as a complete surprise. So I wouldn't know.
Yeah. But how did you feel when you heard Searchers record on that?
Everybody in the business loved that record. I remember Graham Nash saying to me, "Mike, Goodbye My Love, your new record is so good." You know, and even people in the business today say, "Are you going to do Goodbye My Love?" I said, "Well, yeah. As long as one of you guys in the backing band can do the harmony for me, because it needs that harmony, along with the main vocal." But it's still a popular song today.
Okay, well, we'll hear the original and then we'll hear your version. So, Goodbye My Love there by the Searchers, and before that, the original by Robert Mosley, and you haven't heard that for years, Mike.
No, I mean, I don't play records anymore, to be honest with you, and certainly not the Searchers records. I mean, come on.
How did you think your version compared to the original when you heard that?
I thought, just listening now to those two versions, I thought ours was pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially with the change of vocal, with Chris singing the soft sort of part in the middle.
Yeah.
And me coming back in with the sharper tone on the chorus.
But you hadn't just copied the original; you'd done it at a slightly different tempo, and clearly they'd had a much higher voice on
I
it.
think it would be very difficult to copy that original version, because the guy's breathing is so different, and even with the pronunciation of the words, it's totally different. It's a type of song where you would not get the same person. You get two people, it would be totally different. But I have to say, I was quite impressed at the time, and I'm still impressed today.
Right. Now, of course, your biggest hit was with Needles and Pins. And what was interesting when I read your book was that you nearly didn't have that as a single, because there were factions in the group as to what to have as a single.
That's right.
Yeah.
I suppose you get this all the time in the groups. Everyone's different, aren't they?
Yeah.
You get half the band will like one record and half will like the other, unless you're writing your own original material, of course. But yeah, I mean, we had to fight Pie Records really to get that released.
So what happened? You'd had Sweets for My Sweet, Sugar and Spice.
Yeah, and they wanted something similar.
Yeah.
I suppose you can't blame record companies. They're like any other business. They want to make money. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's have another one, sugary type Sweets for My Sweet song. But no, we insisted that it's got to be Needles and Pins, and Tony Hatch backed us up on that.
And what would have been the single if you'd lost?
What comes to mind? I Count the Tears.
Yes.
Have you ever heard?
Well, that's what you mentioned in the book. That's a Drifters song.
Yeah.
So that they did Sweets for My Sweet.
That was more or less put up with Needles and Pins as the next single. But of course, I mean, Chris and I went for Needles and Pins. It had to be.
So you had two for Needles and Pins and two for I Count the Tears?
I think so, yeah. I think so. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember who sang in the band I Count the Tears. It was Tony or Chris. I can't remember.
Well, you'll soon know, because I've got it lined up now. but I mean, I think it would have been a hit anyway. Either way, you'd have had a hit, but you wouldn't have had the very big hit with I Count the Tears.
No, and I don't think it would have stood the test of time like Needles and Pins has stood the test of time. You can go anywhere in the world and they play that record and they know who it is instantly. And I don't think the other song would have been as strong.
Do you think it would have been as big a hit if you hadn't sung Needles and Pins there?
Oh, well, I mean, people bring this up, especially in America. Hey, Mike, Pinza, come on, man, what's it? I'm saying, well, it just happened, It's like, it's a Scouse thing, really. How many times have you heard people put a little something on the end of a word in Liverpool? And on the session, I remember, we put 2 tracks down, and I said to Tony Hatch, I'm sorry about that, Tony, that's the way it just come out. And he said, it actually sounds okay, leave it in. And of course, throughout the years, I mean, we're 50 years on, and people still say to me, Mike, Pinza, did you plan that? I said, no, it just happened.
And the song was written by Sonny Bono. Did you meet him?
No, never met him. And obviously we'll never meet him because he died some years ago. But it was only later, really, when you get these songs, and Chris would say, look, Needles and Pins, this is going to be the next single. You don't actually look at who the original artist is. You just look at the song and that was it. And obviously it was Jackie D. Shannon when we got the song. But I had no idea at the time that Sonny Bono had wrote that song.
Okay.
I was just telling Mike that same time that you interviewed her, I saw Jackie DeShannon in London. And as you know, I'm a huge fan, mainly because of the Searchers of Jackie DeShannon. And when she came to performing Needles and Pins, one section of the song, she actually sang in tribute to the Searchers, Pinzer, which he doesn't sing on her version, but she added that.
I'll tell you, when I interviewed Jackie DeShannon, she said, you can meet me in Claridge's, come down for afternoon tea. And the bill which she paid for was 70 quid. So I'll always remember that interview.
Yeah.
Here it is anyway. First of all, it's I Count the Tears. So see what you think. Would this have been a hit single?
Na 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 late at night. Na 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 late at night. I sit and I count the tears. I have counted every day since you've been away. It seems like 1,000 years. And at na 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 late at night. Na 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 late at night. I sit and I count those tears. I have counted all your lies, all your alibis. I'm a guy who leaves just what he hears. And at na 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 late at night, na 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 late at night, I sit and I count those tears. She's gone and found somebody new. He may be happy now, but soon he'll be counting every day that she's been away. It'll seem like 1,000 years. And at na 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 late at night, na 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 late at night, I'll sit and I'll count those tears. I'll sit and I'll count those tears.
So Needles and Pins from the Searchers, which was the third single and of course a #1 hit, and I Count the Tears, which might have been a single. And was that you singing on that, Mike?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounded like me.
Yeah, because it's a song about someone very, very lonely. I count the tears, I sit here and count the tears, and you're singing it sort of bright and happily. It's sort of typical early Mersey Beat, really.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chris is on that as well, of course.
Yeah.
Singing harmonies and that. And obviously, he more or less put the thing together and said, let's do it like this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a song that I liked, but I didn't get carried away about it.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Tell me, talking of cover versions, when the Byrds brought out Mr. Tambourine Man, did you think we'll cover this? Because that would have been interesting, wouldn't it?
But I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
I don't remember Chris at all having any idea at all or any ideas like that. No.
You could have done it great, though, couldn't you, Mr. Tambourine?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly, but...
did you think that
Mr. Tambourine Man came along later.
Start of 65, I think, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were sort of... I think we'd had our #1s and that by then. And that's a Dylan song, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Did you think the Byrds had taken your sound or not, or were you...
No, at the time, I didn't realise anything like that at all. It's only in later years when people start to think about a similar sound. The Byrds must have done that. I go to America now, and you'll get interviewed, and the first thing they say is, Roger McGuinn, I think he picked up your 12-string play, your 12-string guitar playing. And I'm going, well, I don't think so. The guy's really good, And he said, no. Well, let's get it right, he was saying. He heard you with the Rickenbacker 12-string, and he took it from there. And I'm going, oh, if you say so.
Have you met Roger McGuinn, though?
No, I've not met any of those guys at all. But it is nice when people say that, because you sort of say to yourself, you go away in a corner and say, I can't believe somebody's been sort of, got some ideas about guitars or the sounds of guitars from listening to our 60s songs. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we're playing quite a few things that you haven't heard for years and years, and I wonder what you thought when this was released.
We sent them away to earn their pay. What a place it was, and they knew they had to go away and get down on their knees to earn their pay. And they queued all day. Oh yes, we will, sir. We'll clean those saucepans and tins, yes, sir.
Yeah. What did you think when they came out? Did you know they were doing it to begin with?
I had no idea. No, I laughed, obviously.
Yeah.
You have to. I'm still laughing today at it. It's nice to play these songs. I haven't seen the Barron Knights in years. I think they're still around, though, aren't they?
Yeah, and that song is actually making quite a serious point, because one of the reasons you were able to continue as a group, really, was because conscription had been abolished, wasn't it? That's why the groups were around.
Yes. What does conscription mean? Come on.
Joining the army.
Yeah.
You must have been delighted when that was abolished.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't think about it, really. People mention it to you, but yeah. To not have to go to wherever, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so Call Up the Groups was a kind of thing that says the groups are still around, let's send them in the army.
Well, it was quite some brilliant lines in the song, actually, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they wrote it themselves too, so it's quite interesting, that. But we'll have another cover version now, and we mentioned Needles and Pins, and Sonny Bono wrote that with Jack Nietzsche, and Jackie DeShannon did the original.
Yeah.
And then you obviously like Jackie DeShannon's records because of When You Walk in the Room.
I've not heard this version for years, before, when we got the song, we played it once or twice. But I'm looking forward to hearing it. Right. Get it on, man, get it on.
Since
So the two versions of Walk in the Room there, the original by Jackie DeShannon, which hadn't heard for ages, Mike.
Well,
and The Searchers. What do you think?
I mean, I might be prejudiced, but I still say ours is the best version. Definitely,
Yeah.
I have to listen to those two versions. I mean, Jackie DeShannon's. For me, it's a wooden version. Do you know who's playing this 12-string guitar on her version?
No, I don't.
Glenn Campbell.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's the Wrecking Crew,
Yeah.
isn't it? The Wrecking
Yes,
Crew
and
backing it.
yes, and Glenn Campbell was part of that.
Yeah, when I heard that version, I thought it sounds a bit limp. Mm-hmm. The actual that figure needs to be like really stand out.
Yes.
Which we made it stand out with the Rickenbacker 12. Mm-hmm.
And this was after Tony had left the group, was it? When you walk in the room.
Yes, this was Frankie's first session with us as a single. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you walk in the room, yeah.
Because in your book you talk about a fracas. That's a key word this week, I think, with Tony in Cardiff, and that amused me because the Kinks had a huge bust up in Cardiff as well. So there must be something about the place.
Well, I mean, I think most groups have a few handbags every now and again. I mean, come on, you know, you got four egos working together, and when you're big and you're selling you're selling records number one on the charts, you're together for like nearly all the year. You don't get any time off at all. Yeah. And so it's bound to happen.
I was interested in your book when you say that when you first met Tony Jackson, he was known as Black Jake. Did that give you some inkling as to what his personality might be like?
I can't remember who christened him with that name, you know, whether it was me or John McNally, I can't remember. But he was, he loved Elvis Presley. Mm-hmm. And he looked a little bit like him with the sideburns, and he sang Elvis songs, and I think he liked to call himself Clint Reno, as Elvis did in one of his movies. Yeah. So Tony was a great lad. Mm-hmm. But like everything, everything changes, and he changed.
And when you say there were egos in the group, was that because you were doing the lead vocals and he wasn't, or what?
Thinking back, it probably was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a big issue with me at all. I mean, it just happened that I sang Needles and Pens on the stage in the set, and Tony Hatch had no reason to change when we went in the studio. Tony sang Love Potion number 9, and he sang Sweet's My Sweet. Mm-hmm. I mean, we provided the harmony backings for it, but it was... nobody sat down and said, "You're singing this song, Mike, you're going to sing this song." It was the way we sang them at the time. And Tony Hatch was quite prepared to say, "Let's do them in the studio as you do them on stage." Yeah.
Now, Tony leaves and Frank Allen comes in. Had you thought at the time we should leave this as a Liverpool group and bring another Liverpool lad in? Or wasn't that an issue and you brought in someone from outside?
Well, I probably did think like that at the time. But of course, when you're so big at the time, you've had a couple of number one records, you've got the London management team. And we had Tito Burns, and he just had Cliff Richard and the Shadows, and you know, he wanted to make us as big as them. Mm-hmm. And I think he had a lot to say about Frank joining the band. Because Chris, well, I said in the book actually that I don't think John and I had a say in the matter. Chris was going to have him in the band anyway. And he did.
And interesting you mentioned Tito Burns too, because Chris used to listen to my show, and often when I went home and there was a telephone message from Chris who'd been listening to whoever I'd been talking to, you see. And I did an interview with the Zombies one day, and I was talking to Rod Argent, and I said, and when I get home, there'll be a message from Chris saying he's been hearing the interview with the Zombies, you see.
Right.
And he said, well, when you speak to Chris, tell him Tito's got our money as well.
Well, it happens, you know.
Yeah.
It happens. It's not worth going back over the old sort of old rope like that. I mean, it happens in this business. Mm-hmm. You know, people say to me, "Oh, would you change anything if you had to go back?" I don't think so. Tito really worked hard for us. I mean, he took us to America.
But it was typical of the managers at the time, wasn't it, really?
I'm sure. I honestly didn't know where the money was going at that time. You were so busy working, recording. You were in the studio all the time. Pi wanted another album. And so thinking about money came later. Mm-hmm. And you suddenly think to yourself, where is the money going? And then you hear all the stories, of course.
Yeah. Would you have liked Brown Epstein as a manager? Because he by all accounts, was an extremely honest person.
Well, I don't know. I never really met the man. You know, you could count on one hand the times that I actually spoke to him. But no, you know, in retrospect, I think Tito done a great job for us. I thought he took us to America, got us on the Ed Sullivan Show. That's what he wanted to do. And, you know, he got us there.
Well, definitely. And you also appeared, now let's find the cover for this, on the 1965 Poll Winners concert of the New Musical Express.
That's right.
And here you are doing Bumblebee live. I'm not going to play the introduction where you're introduced, because you're actually introduced by Jimmy Savile.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, indeed. Did you like him or not?
At the time, well, there was no reason to dislike him, because obviously you took him as you found him, and he seemed to be quite nice. And I suppose everyone else thought the same at the time.
Yeah.
So, but as we know now, you know, he wasn't.
Yeah, and here it is anyway, Bumblebee in 1965.
Don't try and understand me. You never could do that. Oh, and in the end, you'd wind up being hurt. I'm a man with too many problems that keep pounding on my brain. So if you want me, you'll take me for what I'm worth. You want me, you'll take me for what I'm worth. I don't pretend to be a saint. My sins, they are many. But there's no one perfect in this universe. And though you think I'm weird, don't try and change me, dear. 'Cause if you want me, you'll take me for what I'm worth. If you want me, you'll take me for what I'm worth. Hear a howling wind outside my door. There's restlessness within. Oh, I'm like a rain cloud that one day may burst. We both know I'll be leaving, and if one little tear you breathe, oh, it's alright, 'cause that's all I'm really worth. It's alright, 'cause that's all I'm really worth. And if you think about me in your lonesome hours, oh, and on your lips there's a sweet word and not a curse, oh, then I'll be coming back one day when my wandering is over. Oh, if you want me, you take me for what I'm worth. If you want me, you take me for what I'm worth. If you want me, you take me for what I'm worth. If you want me, you take me for what I'm worth.
Okay. And I'm talking to Mike Pender of The Searchers today, and on the beat he's got his autobiography out, The Search for Myself, and he's appearing in the Solid Silver 60s show with Billy J. Kramer, The Mersey Beats, P.P. Arnold and Chris Farlow, and the dates include Southport Theatre on March the 27th and the Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool on April 3rd. And we played the live version of Bumblebee there from the 1965
I like the way you
Paul
said
Winters
that.
concert.
Bumblebee.
Yes. One of the Searchers records you actually like least, that song, is it?
I have to say, even today, I mean, I didn't go overboard when we recorded it all those years ago. But even today, you know, I've just come back from America, as I said before, and that's one of the songs they asked to put in the set, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that song.
Yeah.
It's just not serious enough for me. It's a comedy type sort of thing. You know?
Yeah.
And so, no, it's not one of my favourite songs.
Yeah, and when you did the Enemy Paul Winters concert there, when I played it, I knew there were a few seconds before you sort of warmed up before you came on stage. I didn't realise it was about 40 seconds.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
I'd never heard that in years.
So Jimmy Savile introduces you, and then there's a whole minute before you actually start performing.
Well, I've not got a copy of that at all.
Yeah.
But in saying that, Bumblebee, Chris found it, as he found all those songs,
Yes.
and, you know, listens to the American version. It's totally different to our version.
Yeah. Llewellyn Baker.
I mean, I must admit, I didn't go overboard when Chris said, I think we should do this. I said, okay, we'll do it, you know, we'll go along, and no point in arguing, really.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it was just a bit of a fun song for me.
Yeah.
And we got to number 2 in America, I couldn't believe it.
And then a year or so later, you sort of change the attitude of the Searchers, really, and you go into the sort of folk rock vein, don't you? And you do Take Me For What I'm Worth and the like.
And What Have They Done to the Rain?
Yes.
Yeah. What Have They Done to the Rain came along first. We actually did that early on in our careers before we ever made any singles at Pie Records. I think we used to do that in the Star Club.
Really?
I always, yeah, I'm sure we did. I always remember Adrian Barber saying to me, do the one about the rain. He seemed to like it, which was strange for him, really.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the German audiences like songs they could sort of stamp up and down.
Well, they do.
Yeah,
they like the ump and stump, and definitely.
Yeah. But they like this as well.
But they like that one, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one you just mentioned, of course, was the P.F. Sloan one, Take Me For What I'm Worth. I still like doing that today. They still like that song in America, and it's got a certain kind of appeal for me. Nice little guitar riff in it, and there's a lot of feeling goes into that song.
Now, where did you get what have they done to the rain? What have they done to the rains from? Because that comes from a folk artist, Malvina Reynolds, not the sort of album you'd normally have picked up at the time.
No, we got the Joan Baez version to learn the song from. I've never heard the Malvina Reynolds version of this song.
Oh, you're in for a treat then.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to that. But again, you know, Chris was into all that as well, and I suppose that was a bit of a change in direction for the band at the time. And it actually got into the charts, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, did you think you were being controversial making a song about nuclear war or not?
No, at the time. I have to be honest and say, when it was brought to our attention, you know, later after we recorded it, I sat down and thought, right, yeah, I can see what they're talking about. I didn't realise at the time. I just thought it was a nice song, What Have They Done to the Rain, nice tune, nice harmonies. But yeah, it really meant something, especially in America.
Yeah, I mean, did you think, Norman, as I did when that record came out, you know, the Searchers are becoming very, very interesting here. They're doing something quite unlike any of the other groups around.
Well, there were other groups doing folk songs, beat groups, beating up, so to speak, folk songs. But it was a good version of What Have They Done to the Rain? And of course it highlighted Chris, because he'd be on the bongos.
That's right.
Yes.
I remember Brian Epstein liking that song as well. So he went for the softer versions of our hit records, like Goodbye My Love, like What Have They Done to the Rain.
Yeah, well, when he appeared on Desert Island Discs, the record that he chose of the Beatles was All My Loving. So same type of thing, isn't it? Yeah. Here we go.
Just a little rain falling all around. The grass lifts its head to the heavenly sound. Just a little rain, just a little rain.
So, you hadn't heard the original of that before, Mike. What do you think?
Well, it's different, I've got to say that. But that lady obviously wrote the song and sat there with her acoustic guitar in her living room, and she's actually recorded it very probably very similar to the way she's written it, just for herself, and it's her version. And again, after listening to the two versions, I have to say I much prefer our version. Yeah,
It's a very nice arrangement. What have they done to the rain, isn't it? That's Tony Hatch, is it?
yeah. He applied the strings on it, and but I think Chris had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
As Tony Hatch. I mean, you know, Tony was the producer, and he wants the final sound, and he wants it to sound nice. But Chris was always there to to say no, not like that, Tony.
Yeah. I mean, did Tony Hatch ever put out anything that you weren't too happy with, or not?
Well, Sugar and Spice, maybe.
But then he wrote that. didn't he?
Which he'd written. He had a vested interest in that, didn't he?
Definitely. You know, Fred Nightingale was the name on the label, which we found out later was Tony Hatch.
Yeah.
But this happens in the business. You know.
How much later did you find that out?
Well, probably a couple of weeks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it was brought to our attention. You know, you always get people to say, "Do you know who wrote that song?" Really?
Yes.
Oh, it was Tony Hatch. But the thing is, it almost made #1 again.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? You know, if it got us up there to #1 or #2, great.
Yeah, well, Tony Hatch told me you'll like this because it came back to haunt him. He was on a plane and they were showing the Robin Williams films, Goodbye Vietnam, where he
Right, they
plays
played
a
it,
DJ.
yeah.
And Robin Williams plays as a DJ. He plays Sugar and Spice by the Searchers in that. And so Tony Hatch was very pleased to hear it. And he waited for the credits to come up to see his name in there. And then he thought, damn, it's Fred Nightingale.
Yeah. Well, there
So
you go.
he didn't get his name in that
There you
film
go.
because of
Nice
that.
one. Well, there you go.
Well, Norman's off to a gig. He's doing a DJing job tonight. Is it something special, Norman?
It's an old friend's wedding. And literally, he's fairly old. He's in his 50s, so he's
That's
getting
not
there.
old. Come on, Norman.
And so, yes, I'm doing that shortly.
Right, and you're going to be taking these old singles with you, but you brought in "Someday We're Gonna Love Again." What can you tell us about that?
Well, actually, I was just telling Mike that this gets played at Northern Soul nights, and it was actually a B-side. It wasn't the A-side. And again, the Searchers did a great job on this.
Yeah, was this Chris Curtis again bringing the single?
Yeah,
for
of
you?
course it was. I wasn't happy with that song, and it didn't sell very well, although it got in the top 20.
Yes,
I can't remember what it got to.
number 11 actually. So it did okay.
It did okay, but after Don't Throw Your Love Away, we got to #1. I think that was the next single, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And we realised, you know, the next single, it just had to be really good. And it was.
Okay. Anyway, let's hear the original "Someday We're Gonna Hit Love Again." So the original of "Someday We're Gonna Love Again" there by Barbara Lewis, and then the Searchers version. And you actually said you hadn't heard the Searchers version for a
Yes,
bit.
along.
Never mind Barbara Lewis.
Well, yeah. You know, I don't play these songs anymore, and occasionally you might hear one on the radio, but on hearing it again, our version was quite good, actually, yeah?
Yeah.
Quite sweet sound, nice. Obviously, at the time, it wasn't a great big hit like the songs that had gone before.
Yeah. And often you've done these songs, I see, a little bit faster than the original.
Yes,
And that's a sort of Mersey beat thing, isn't
I
it?
think
Yeah.
so. You always notice that. You know, the tempos are always a little bit above the original versions where we actually got the song from.
Yeah. Were there any songs in the 60s, as say the Hollies or Jerry and the Pacemakers or what have you did that were covers that you thought, gosh, I wish we'd got that first?
No, I can't recall thinking like that at all. No.
Yeah.
You know, and listening to all those songs, you sat there and you say, well, it's not a bad song. But you were concentrating on your own songs. And by the time we'd reached sort of 1966, we'd had... record success was starting to dwindle a bit. And Chris was finding it hard to find really good songs again.
Yeah.
And especially... And if you don't write the material, it becomes very difficult.
Well, I'm going to play a song that you did write now, a song you wrote with Chris called He's Got No Love.
That's right.
Although I think there's been the blurred image case this week, the plagiarism, and the Rolling Stones could have said, oh, this riff's a bit like the last time. But then again, they took the last time from the Staple Singers.
Well, I have to tell you that that's where I got the idea from.
Oh, right. So you admit it.
Being totally honest about it, we were doing a tour with the Rolling Stones in Australia, and I just said to Chris, what do you think of this? Did that sort of riff, very similar to theirs. I said, we can make a song around this. And so it was my idea, but Chris did most of that song, put it together, and nearly all the lyrics. But it was the only success that we had in the band that the group members actually wrote the song.
Yeah.
So it's my little sort of thing where, yes, I did write a hit record. Only one.
And has anyone ever covered that? Have you heard any other versions of it?
I have no idea.
Yeah, because it could easily be done by another group.
Yeah.
Anyway, here it is, The Searchers, He's Got No Love.
Sometimes a man might wanna cry. Sometimes a man might wanna die. He wonders why he's standing all alone. It's 'cause he's got no love to call his own. Sometimes a man feels oh so sad. Sometimes a man is hurt so bad. He wonders why he's feeling sad and cries. It's 'cause he's got no love to dry his eyes. He'd give the world to know someone would care for him. He hopes someday someone will share love with him. Sometimes a man might wanna cry. Sometimes a man might wanna die. He wonders why he's feeling sad inside. It's 'cause he's got no love to stand beside. He'd give the world to know someone would care for him. He hopes someday someone will share love with him. Sometimes a man feels oh so sad. Sometimes a man is hurt so bad. He wonders why he's feeling sad inside. It's 'cause he's got no love to stand beside. He's got no love. He's got no love. He's got no love.
It still sounds really good, that. He's Got No Love, The Searchers.
Yeah. Not heard it for a while, but yeah, quite proud of that.
Yeah, and that was at a time when groups were starting to get heavier, weren't they?
Just about. We were thinking about changing our style and becoming a little bit heavier, but we left it till the end of the 60s to go into that more. Starts to grow the hair longer with the flower power shirts, and I remember we went over to America to try and do something new and appeal to a new audience, but of course never happened.
Yeah, and you were never offered anything like Monterey or
No, nothing like that, no.
Yeah. Just before we get off the 60s and we go to the 70s after the news, there is a story in your book I must mention, and that is you take Roy Orbison to an Everton match.
Yeah. Obviously, we were on tour, and I think Brian Poole and the Tremolo's were on tour with us. And it just so happened that the Saturday night gig was somewhere just outside London. And Everton were playing Chelsea. And we said, Brian Poole said, "All right, Mike, we take Roy to see Everton." I said, "Yeah, come on." Somebody organised the tickets. Fred Perry, the tour manager, came along to keep his eye on Roy, of course. But Roy was a bit mystified with the game. Couldn't quite grasp, as I am when I go to America and I watch their football game.
Yes.
I've never been able to work it out.
Did he like it though?
No, I don't. I think he was waiting for the end. Actually, he wanted to get back.
Okay. Well, let's go up to the news with what I think is your best ever vocal performance, and that's Solitaire. That's a great performance, and that should have been a huge hit single because you did it before Andy Williams.
Yeah, disappointed really, but life's full of disappointments. That's the way it goes.
And did you think it was a great song? Did Neil Sedaka give it you?
It was a great song. I didn't realise how good it was until we went to the studio and we put it down. And Tony Hatch, not Tony Hatch, we were RCA then. And the producer said, "Mike, you've done a really good version." The lads in the band said, "Great," and everybody was confident it was going to happen. But unfortunately, no, Andy Williams got all the plugs and we missed out. Once again.
There was a man, a lonely man, who lost his love through his indifference. A heart that cared, that went unshared until it died within his silence. And solitaire's the only game in town, and every road that takes him down. While life goes on around him everywhere, he's playing solitaire and keeping to himself begins to heal. And still the King of Hearts is well concealed. Another losing game comes to an end and deals them out again. There was a man, a lonely man, who would command the hand he's playing. And solitaire's the only game in town, and
Mike Pender on the show, and that track, Vahila Vala, sort of shows you that the Searchers did all sorts of things that the public hardly knows about, and you're sort of going into Jimmy Buffett territory there, really.
Yeah, surprising really when you play these old albums back. I really like that song. I thought, you know, the original Kenny Loggins version was great, and I thought we did a pretty good version, and I love the steel drums in our version, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, well, I've got Mike in because his autobiography, The Search for Myself, is out now. At the moment, it's just through your website, is it? Or it's on Amazon?
That's right. It's not on Amazon yet, but it will come on Amazon. What I want to do is, with the Solid Silver, I'm hoping to sell the bulk of what's been printed, and then obviously get another print going, and it will go on Amazon.
Yes, I noticed, in fact, that you had printed it yourself. It's
Well, I formed my own publishing company, and I thought, I was advised actually, that Mike, somebody said to me, Mike, the best way to do it is form your own publishing company and pay for everything, and that way you'll get exactly what you want in the book. Because if you go with an or a publisher, they will want to dictate to you most of what goes in, pictures, blah, blah. And I wanted my own stuff to go in. And I wanted to say exactly what I wanted to say and put things right that have been sort of misprinted and taken the wrong way over the years. And so I did it that way. So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you do have a comment in the book that says other books are biased against me.
Well, did I say that?
Yes.
I would never say a thing like that. Come on.
You did. Something had got your goat. Page 15, books are biased against me.
Well, I don't know.
You must have thought so.
I must have thought. There are a couple of other books that have been written about how we started, where we were going, and some of it's quite wrong. You know, it needs to be the truth.
Yeah.
How the band started, and you know, it's there.
And now you've got your own publishing company. There could be other books as well, could there?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's strange when you've written a book. And you get everything together, you give it to the proofreader, it gets printed, you come back, you start thinking of all kinds of other things. And people say, Mike, why didn't you put that in the book?
Indeed, when I read your book, you make so many comments about people misjudge the iron door, they don't talk about the iron door enough vis-a-vis the cavern and things, and I thought, there's your second book.
Dead right.
Yeah. And you're also doing the Solid Silver 60s tour with Billy J. Kramer, the Mersey Beats, P.P. Arnold and Chris Farlow. And the dates include the Grand Blackpool, March the 22nd, the Palace, Manchester, March the 23rd, Southport Theatre, March the 27th, and the Liverpool Phil, April the 3rd. All places that you know well, really.
Yes, done them all before. Solid Silver is always a great tour to do. And of course, these tours now, for everybody, including the artists, it's just a walk down memory lane, really. Nostalgia. I mean, it's really why I formed my own group 25 years ago, because I realised that the Searchers, as we were, there were only John and I left from the originals, and I thought, we tried so many times with different record companies to make a comeback, and sometimes it looked as though it was going to happen, especially with the Sire records, and it didn't. And I decided, well, if I'm going to play nostalgic music for the rest of my life, I'm going to form myself a new band and go my own way and form my own opinions and just get my own life together, and that's what I did.
OK, well, we'll come on to that in a minute or two, but I'd like to get on to the Sire records first, because I do think that even though they didn't sell well, people who know those records really love them. They're great Searchers records, I think. And some very, very well-chosen songs.
Yes. We had the pick of, well, there are so many artists who do great songs all the time. And we got people like Tom Petty, John Hyatt. They'd send their songs in. I think Sire Records got onto these people and said, look, Searchers are in Rockfield. If you've got any stuff that you think might suit them, please let's have it. And we got lots of stuff. I mean, to get back to what I said before, you know, if you write your own material, it's such a strong tie that you have, and you can go in the studio, you can dictate to the record company, but unfortunately. Yeah. We didn't, and we had to count on songs that Sire put up for us. But Sire still thought that we had it in us to make it again.
And this is Seymour Stein, isn't it?
Seymour Stein.
Yeah.
He came to a gig in somewhere down on the south coast, and he come in, just a ballroom gig. And I remember him coming into the dressing room, and he said, "Mike, you guys are still great. Your voice is still really good. We're going to make it for you again." And it really gave you the confidence, and I thought it was going to happen, but it didn't.
Yeah. And a few years later, if Leigh Mathers had come to you with There She Goes and not done it with the Lars, but given it to you instead, what do you think would have happened if the Searchers had done There She Goes?
Who knows? Who knows? There's no guarantees in this game at all.
But you could have done a great version of that.
We probably could. But you can do the greatest version of a song in the world. It doesn't mean that people are going to buy it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have Switchboard Susan, which is a lovely song, isn't it?
Great song.
And a very rude line in it, too.
Well, no, it wasn't me singing that.
Oh, who's singing that, then?
No, it was me.
Yes. I look at you and I get an extension. Switchboard Susan.
What a great line.
Operator Services, can I help you?
Switchboard Susan, won't you give me a line? I need a doctor, give me 999. First time I picked up my telephone, I fell in love with your ringtone. I'm a long distance romancer, and I'll keep on trying till I get an answer. Give it one more chance. He's a greater little operator. Switch.
I think that's a great track by the Searchers. You were getting, I suppose, around that Sire period, you were getting a bit sort of fed up with sort of doing the chicken in a basket type shows, were you?
Yeah, but I mean, you had to do it. You know, when we recorded those albums at Rockfield Studios, I was disappointed in Sire actually, because it would have been better had they give us like a deal, upfront money, where we go in the studio with no worries about, are we going to be earning some money? We actually did gigs at the same time as we were recording.
Yes.
Leave the studio maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go and do a gig somewhere to earn some money. Because although Sire provided the Rockville studio and it was really enjoyable, you know, we didn't get any money. We never made anything from it.
You couldn't afford to, say, take 2 weeks off to make the album?
Well, no. I mean, you know, I had 3 children, and, you know, my wife said to me, you know, we've managed, of course, but I used to worry about my family and you know, what's going to happen if this doesn't make it, if it doesn't happen. It's when there's nothing much in that period of 6 weeks in the studio.
Yeah.
And I would have felt more comfortable if Si would have said, look, you know, there's maybe 100 grand. We know you're going to make it, blah. It would have given me more confidence, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I mean, the sessions don't give the impression of being rushed at all. They're wonderful performances, I think. And one of my favourite songs is Hearts in Her Eyes. Now, that was written specially for you, was it, or what?
No, Will Birch, I think, co-wrote that with somebody. I can't remember now. Or did he just write the whole song? I can't remember. But
yeah, he wrote it with John Wicks.
John Wicks.
Yeah.
Now, that song, they recorded it first. Was it the Records?
Yes, there was a band
yes,
called, yes.
Yeah. They recorded it, and they more or less obviously didn't have much success with it, and they gave it to us and said, you know, do you guys want to do it? We said, yeah. And Sire said, this could happen for you. Everybody rated the song. We thought, again, what a great single. I thought at the time, because we were at that sort of stagnant period where we didn't have a manager, we were sort of finding our way again. There was a lot of disruption in the band, whether we were... I mean, Sire actually wanted Billy to leave the band.
This is the drummer?
Yeah. They said, look, we would like to get a new drummer for the session, and even have you thought about, if there's a success here, doing open-air shows and whatever, we think you need a bigger drum sound. And we were sort of, what? We didn't do it, of course, and I'm glad we didn't, because there was no success at the end of the day. But record companies are like that.
Yeah. Now, I've always wondered with Hearts in Her Eyes, is this an outtake that was released or the genuine take? Because when it comes to the last chorus, you go, hearts in her eyes. There's a little jerk in it, which is very catchy, but was it deliberate or not?
Oh, deliberate.
Oh, it was.
Yes, it was part of the song. At the end, we thought we'd change it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and you give it a real Searchers treatment too, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this record has Searchers all over
And we
it.
put our stamp on it: the 12-string guitar, the riffs, the harmonies. Yes, it was almost made for us, actually.
Some girls have a whole lot of trouble finding one boy. Others want a lover, and some they just want a bum boy. My girl, she's smart. She's never ever gonna give it all. She's wise. She's got hearts in her eyes. She's got hearts in her eyes. Like a kid in a toy shop, she can't stop. She wants all the boys. She's got hearts in her eyes. Some girls want a boy to give them all the action. Others in a hurry to find a little satisfaction. This girl, she's tough. She gets going when the going gets rough, and she cries. She's got hearts in her eyes. She's got hearts in her eyes. Like a kid in a toy shop, she can't stop. She wants all the boys. She's got hearts in her eyes. When she's at a party, she will fleet from boy to boy. But you never settle till her heart's filled with joy. My girl, she's smart. She's never ever gonna give her all she wants. She's got hearts in her eyes. She's got hearts in her eyes. Like a kid in a toy shop, she can't stop. She wants all the boys. She's got hearts in her eyes. She's got hearts in her eyes. Like a kid in a toy shop, she can't stop. She wants all the boys. She's got hearts in her eyes.
I hope you heard the she got there.
Oh yes, it was well meant. Oh yes.
Actually, the Mamas and the Papas do that on one of their hit singles too. And Paul McCartney met John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. John Phillips told me this and said, "I love that bit in I Saw Her Again where you go, I saw her again, you see." And Paul McCartney said, "That's a mistake, isn't it? No one's that clever."
Get rid of that stutter. Come on.
Yes, indeed. But it is a great song, and you still do it to this day.
Yeah, we do it. In fact, I was in America last year doing a similar British invasion tour, and in Los Angeles, John Wicks was in the audience, who co-wrote that song. And we arranged for him to come up on stage, and he sang it with me, sang the harmony. And the audience loved it. They love anything like that. Absolutely brilliant.
Great. Just before we play the next record, I just got a few what's-ons. We've mentioned the Solid Silver 60s tour that you're doing, of course. And on this week, Linda Gale Lewis, Jerry Lee Lewis's sister, she's going to be with Mike Burns' Sun Rockers at the Heswell Royal British Legion. That's on Tuesday night. She was on with Billy Butler this morning, and you can hear that on Listen Again. And Ray Sawyer, who has his own Dr. Hook band now, is going to be at Southport Theatre on March the 18th. And again, he was with Billy Butler. He was on last Monday, and you can hear that on Listen Again if you want to. And what else have we got? Easter Sunday afternoon. That Tom Petty wrote a song for you around that time, Lost in Your Eyes. What do you remember of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a very nice song at the time. Lost in Her Eyes. Or was it Lost in Your Eyes? No, Lost in Her Eyes.
Lost in Your Eyes, yeah.
Yeah. I was made up to get that. Because, of course, Petty has been one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Especially with the connection with the 12-string Rickenbacker and his kind of stuff.
Well, he always loved the Byrds and the Searchers.
Yeah, and his kind of stuff does lend itself to the kind of stuff we like. And I've seen him many times on TV and documentaries and stuff like that. And he writes... I like his voice, and when he was with the Travelling Wilburys, I thought he was great as well. Absolutely brilliant with Orbie and George Harrison and Jeff Lynne. So yeah, I was made up to get that song, absolutely.
Light from a window, gold and black, sound from a dream. I was hypnotized, I was paralyzed, I could hardly speak. And baby, baby, you never
I don't know about you at home, but there's someone in the studio who's enjoying these tracks because Mike hasn't heard them for a bit, and you're impressed by what you got up
Yeah,
to.
I mean, I don't play these anymore. You know, people come up to me and say, Mike, the Sire stuff, you know, it was really good. And I just agree with them and say, yeah. But I've not sat down and listened to these for a long, long time. And I have to say that, you know, I'm quite surprised how good they were. And I'm thinking to myself, had a modern group recorded some of these songs, I think they would have had really big success with them. But because we'd been there, done it, got the T-shirt, we'd had our success, I think it's so difficult to make that break again.
But in the end, it could have all come back to you. I mean, look at someone like James Taylor, who went so out of fashion, and now he's back as an elder statesman and an enormous act.
Well, yes, in a way, it has come back, but on the performing side.
Yes.
You know, like being able to go to America.
Yes.
I've been there 3 times in the last 2 years. So the success thing is still there.
But you're stuck with doing your old hits rather than new material. Aren't
Exactly, nostalgia. You know, walks down. But who cares? You know, if they want to.
Well, you cared obviously in when you were making the Sire records.
But I did up to a point.
Yeah.
And up to the Sire sessions, I thought, another. We've been through Liberty, RCA, started off with Pie, obviously, got to Sire, and it really looked good for us, and then a letdown again, and then there was one other record company after that, and so we've been through so many that in the end I said, that's it, I've had enough.
Yes. And did you do it sort of without the rest of the band knowing you were planning to leave?
No, they always had an idea. I mean, since the biggest idea they had that something was going to happen was when we were with RCA. And Richard Swainson, the producer there, said, look, you know, we've just signed Alan Clark from the Hollies. He's going to do a new album. Well, would you like to do the same? So, I mean, the guys in the band knew what was happening. They knew I was going to go sooner or later.
But in the book, there's quite you describe quite a lot of ill feeling between yourself and the former members. Could it have been handled a different way and it all worked out well?
Not really, no, because, you know, like or unlike in the 60s when Tony left, Tito Burns, he administered everything. He brought in Frank, he did it, you know, this is what was going to happen. But no, I had to do it sort of, I mean, I had approaches from so many people, innuendos, if you like, from even Pat Moran at Sire saying, you know, Mike, you could do your own album. Have you ever thought about it? You know, just general conversation. And I thought, well, yes. And several times through the 70s, people said to me, you know, Mike, what do you think about doing it? But I wasn't ready to do it then. I didn't have. If you haven't got the confidence, there's no point in doing anything like that.
But you must have been sorry at the way it worked out, because you reprint a court order at the back of the book, and you have lost their friendship.
I think you've got to handle things like that. You know, it's inevitable. I mean, at the time, I still don't know how it came that we went to court over that. I mean, you know, absolutely stupid. We just gave the barristers and the lawyers so much money, both of us.
Yeah.
And really, when you boil it down, you know, Frank and John wanted to stop me working. They couldn't take that I was getting all that work.
Yes.
When I formed my own band, Mike Pender Searchers, my agent was so busy, we couldn't handle the work, and they couldn't take it. So they felt that they had to have me incarcerated.
Well, in a way, it was a bit late in the day for there to be 2 Searchers bands.
Of course. Of course. I mean...
and in fact, when I met Tony Jackson, he was actually thinking of forming the Researchers, which he never did.
Well, yeah. I mean, Tony...
So it could have been through...
Tony and Chris, I think... Well, Chris had enough. He didn't want to go on. Tony... He wasn't happy because he was in turmoil with, especially Chris in the band. Couldn't get on with them at all.
Yeah.
And he felt that the way we were going, the direction we were going, the songs we were recording, he didn't really like them. But I mean, I don't know whether he really took it badly that I was had become the lead vocalist.
Yeah.
But
and he was also the oldest in the band, and that must make a difference.
Yes, he was the oldest, and he'd been married and divorced. At think he'd been married 3 times before he finally passed away a couple of years ago. But Tony wanted to go his own way. He felt that, no, this is not for me, and he felt confident. He wanted to do so many things in life. He wanted to get in the movies. Maybe, I don't know. If you become over-ambitious in this business, it can destroy you, really.
And did you enjoy forming a new band and finding the musicians?
Oh, yes. The best thing I ever done in my life. I've never been sorry about that. It enabled me to just have my own life, grasp where I was going, what I was doing. And I've never looked back, really. And I realised at the time that I was always going to be a performer. I was never going to be someone who would sit at home and write great material. I've never been like that. I wish I had, because that's the best way to be in this business. If you can write your own material, you're not only writing for yourself, you're writing for other people as well. And if you have success, you couldn't wish for anything better. Unfortunately, I was never that way inclined. And I've always been an out-and-out performer. Yeah,
well, you write frankly about the split in your book. I was thinking it's quite possible and on the cards that in the next few years, the Searchers are reinstated or are put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And you'd have to be reunited for that, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how they work it. I mean, I was speaking to Terry Sylvester over in America recently, and he said that when the Hollies were... I was going to say reinstated. No, when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he was invited along, but he said they did it separately. And Graham Nash and
Tony Hicks
were on a separate table. Yeah, and the guys who joined later stages were set out on a different table. So, I mean, I've written in my book that half of it would have to be posthumous. For Chris and Tony, because really it's them. It's the original band. I mean, there's a famous saying, and it goes something like, "It is only the original that stands the test of time. Anything that follows is a copy." I mean, there's only one Beatles.
Yes.
Harrison, Ringo, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney. There's a million other Beatles, but there's only one original. And there's only one Searchers, really.
Yes.
The Searchers that had the success and took the name to 3 continents, and slugged their way through the Star Club, gave up their jobs in the 60s, took a chance, and, they are the 4 guys, really. And, OK, there's John and I left from the originals, and I think it would have to be John and I, and maybe... the other guys who are there now, somewhere along the line, but it would have to be involved, definitely, Chris and Tony Jackson.
Yeah, but obviously you would hope that you will get inducted at some stage.
Well, people have said to me, Mike, shouldn't you guys be in the Hall of Fame? And I said, well, it would be absolutely brilliant, but I'm not going to stand here and say that we should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. No, it would be lovely to be inducted into it, absolutely.
And someone will be thinking of a statue in Liverpool for you too. you never know.
That.
I mean, the one for Billy Fury is brilliant, isn't it? At the
Absolutely brilliant. Well, there's going to be one for Epstein, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yes,
yeah.
But I love the one for Billy Fury because you could tell from a great distance it's him. The shoulders, it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Okay, well, let's have a track from Mike Pender's Searchers now. This is Red Ferrari, so can you tell us about this?
All right. Well, written by Barry, my bass player, and myself. We tried to write a couple of things for this album, but obviously you can only do so many. And really we had to do, for the fans, we had to do a lot of the old hits. Because obviously I need merchandise if I go anywhere in the world. And it's better for me if I have my own band as opposed to selling the original tracks. Yeah. So let people know what my band sounds like. And my vocal is still, I nearly said as good, but somewhere along the line, but still in there, still sounding like my old self. And so I had to get it done, and I just had to have it.
Okay.
Teeth caught the light. She looked so racy.
Well, I mean, really, I have to say that song really was written by Barry. Barry Cowley came up with the idea, and the title was great. I thought, Red Ferrari. You know, it's one of those titles that you think, wow, let's have a listen to this.
Yes.
So Barry did really well on that song.
And how many new songs or relatively new songs do you do in Mike Pender's searches these days?
Hardly any. It's all about the success we had all those years ago. I mean, it's nostalgia. I mean, as I said before, you know, most of the shows now are memory lane shows.
Yeah.
And that's what and the audience will. I mean, you can only if you're on a tour with like 5 other acts, like I've just been in America. You've got Chad and Jeremy. Peter Asher does a great thing with Gordon Waller is superimposed on a screen at the back of him.
Yes.
And they do a duet.
Ah, right. Like
Absolutely.
Natalie Cole with her father.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and of course they've got the original Searchers on a superimposed, and they go. And as I'm on, they go in close up of me on the screen, which is great for the audience.
Yes.
Because sometimes, I mean, we look totally different now. You have to say, you know, the hair's grey or white.
Yeah.
It's nice to still have some, actually. And of course, they can look at the screen and say, God, that is him.
Yeah.
You know, so the recognition thing you need with a nostalgic show. So that's great. But
So you're not thinking in terms of a new album at all?
no. Recording days have gone, I'm afraid. You know, because, you know, a lot of people I know who are still in the game from all those years ago, they've got studios at home.
Yes.
You know, one of the bedrooms is a studio because they're keen and it's like a hobby for them. But all my hobbies and all my interests are outside of music. I find it's better for me. I find I like to get away from the business. Like when I finish Solar Silver 60s after doing 30-odd shows, I want a break.
Yeah. Well, you're right about your collection of antiques in the book, and so you and you say in 1 year you made more in dealing from antiques than you did from the Searchers.
Well, in that year I'm talking about somewhere around about 1974. I can remember, things were pretty tight. Gigs were scarce. You had to go out the country to work. Not a lot of work over here. And I still had our accounts from that year, and I was looking at them going, God, you know, that's all we made in that year.
Yeah.
And that's all the money that we took. And I mean, I had the largest family, so I was always the guy who think, you know, I've got to watch my pennies here.
Yeah.
And see where I'm going. And we'd always been used to a certain lifestyle. And I didn't want the thing to go down. And as we went on and on and on, and we never had success again. And of course, you had to work hard. And all the time, if you've got a group of 4 people plus an agent plus a road crew, it's a lot of wages to pay out, and there's not enough money to go around.
And you have to pay your son, Mike Jr., who's on drums.
Well, of course,
I
now.
mean, if he was here now and I said, is your dad a good boss, what would he say?
He'd say, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a lovely lad. I've got him well trained.
Yeah. And do you do a lot of gigs a year?
In the last few years, yes. Especially with going to America and Solid Silver. I've done 3 Solid Silvers in the last 5 years. So in a year, that really does me. But I do accept other gigs so that the boys in the band can earn some money.
Yeah.
You know, like Mike, my son. And so after a tour, I like to say, for my agent, say, look, you know, rest of the year, he said, well, you've got maybe a dozen one-nighters in. And I said, well, that'll do. I'm not really worried about... I wouldn't like to work all the time, I have to say.
Yeah. And one of your sons, Nathan, died in a terrible accident in 2009.
Yes.
Was it very difficult for you to continue? Did you think at the time, that's it, I've had enough?
No, it never occurred to me that, because I know that Nathan would have said something like, Dad, if he could have spoken to me afterwards, Dad, you know, I'm okay, it happens. You know, you've got to carry on doing what you're doing. And of course, Nathan's never away from our family. My wife lights a candle for him every day. And I mean that, literally every day. And when they run out, she'll buy a box of 100 candles, and we light one every day with his picture. And say if we go, I mean, tonight when I go home, I'm meeting everybody at the local restaurant, and we'll go in with the family, Stephanie, my daughter, Mike, Stephanie's husband, Paul, and my little grandson will be there. And we have a drink to Nathan. So he's never away from us.
Right, and we've got here in your book you talk about his love of Marillion.
That's right.
So let's have Kaylee.
Do you remember chalk hearts melting on a playground wall? Do you remember dawn escapes from moon-washed college halls? Do you remember the cherry blossom in the market square? Do you remember I thought it was confetti in our hair? By the way, didn't I break your heart? Please excuse me, I never meant to break your heart. So sorry, I never meant to break your heart, but you broke mine. Katie, is it too late to say I'm sorry? And Katie, could we get it together again? I just can't go on pretending that it came to a natural end. Katie, oh, I never thought I'd miss you. And Kaylee, I thought that we'd always be friends. We said our love would last forever. So how did it come to this bitter end? Do you remember barefoot on the lawn with shooting stars? Do you remember loving on the floor in Belsize Park? Do you remember dancing in stilettos in the snow? Do you remember you never understood I had to go? By the way, didn't I break your heart? Please excuse me, I never meant to break your heart. So sorry, I never meant to break your heart, but you broke mine. Kaylee, I just wanna say I'm sorry, but Kaylee, I'm too scared to pick up the phone to hear you find another lover to patch up our broken home. Kaylee, I'm still trying to write that love song. Kaylee, it's more important to me now you're gone. Maybe it will prove that we were right, or it'll prove that I was wrong.
Kaylee by Meridian. We've just got 6 minutes to go, so let's see if we can fit two records in. And the class of '64, you were saying, Mike, that you didn't have a recording studio at home. Billy Kinsley does, and so he invited you down there.
For the class of '64, that's right. Yeah, got a phone call from him, and of course Tony Crane was on that album, as was Billy Butler as well. And it was a nice little adventure. I love the song, by the way, that they gave me. I'm trying to remember who wrote it. Kenny Parry and
Frankie Connor.
Frankie Connor, yeah.
And Billy Kinsley, I think.
Billy was in it, but Billy obviously produced it all.
Yeah.
I remember saying, "Can we have some nice steel guitar on that?" He had "Oh, you don't want any country on it, Mike, come on." But it suited the song, actually, didn't it, the steel guitar?
Okay, well, let's hear it.
I don't blame you. You don't blame me. But there's something wrong, and it's not hard to see. And we're falling. Oh yes, we're falling.
falling apart at the seams there from Mike Pender. And just to say that Mike Pender's on tour with the Solid Silver 60s show. He's going to be at the Palace Manchester 23rd of March, Southport Theatre the 27th, April the 3rd at the Phil. Stay tuned now for BBC Introducing with Dave Monks, and he's featuring Karen Turley, who's talking about being in Nashville, Alex Hume and the Sums, and they're both going to be in session. And next week we're starting at 5:30 again, and I'm going to be talking to the DJ Mike Reed, the film composer David Arnold, and Mike Scott of the Waterboys. But today it's just been Mike Pender, and thanks so much for coming in, because it's been a terrific show.
Well,
and thanks Norman for bringing in all those original singles.
Well, it's been a pleasure for me, I have to say.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike, and I'll catch up with you in Southport anyway.
Who knows?
Thanks.
I saw her today, I saw her face, was a face I loved, and I knew I had to run away and get down on my knees and pray that they'd go away, still they'd begin. Needles and pins, because of all my pride, the tears I gotta hide. Hey, thought I was smart, I'd won a heart, didn't think I'd do, but now I see she's worse to him than me. Let her go ahead, take his love instead. One day she will see just how to say please, and get down on her knees. Hey, that's how it begins. She'll feel those needles and pins hurting her, hurting her. Why can't I stop?
Local, national and international news.